All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another week of Stage Door Medium. I hope this video or audio finds you well and healthy at home, wearing a mask. Our episode today, I'm so excited to talk with her today. Just some of the incredible, gosh, I was gushing getting ready for this interview tonight. I was looking up a little bit more because if you're listening at home, I can't look up anything about the folks that I read at first. So it's not until I can like get the green light after the read, and then I'm like, all right, now I really want to explore and see what this person has done, and just we're gonna go over it. Like just the credits are astounding, and then to combine that with the humility of this person is just mind-boggling. So please join me in welcoming Carmel Dean to our show today. Hi, Carmel. How
Hi,
are you?
Jimmy. I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so so excited to have you here.
You're so sweet. Thanks.
Well, if you are watching or listening, it doesn't matter which I don't know why I always say that. It doesn't matter what format. Carmel's credits are crazy. Oh gosh, please bear with me because I know it's got to be awkward on your end to hear all of these. But so Carmel is a gosh, I had it written down. She's a composer, she's an arranger, she's a music director, she's a pianist. She was the musical director for If Then on Broadway, and then she transferred to the tour. Did you do the whole tour? Or did you just get it started up?
I did the first few months. I did the 3 months leg that Adina
Idina.
and Anthony and LaShawns did. Yeah.
Nice. So in addition to that, she was with 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, American Idiot. Um, Gosh, and then just recently, was it 2018, Carmel, that the Transport Group
Mhm.
had your debut production of Renaissance. We were just talking about this, or Renascence, and the music. Oh, if we're going to talk about it, it's incredible. Then I saw that you're currently working on the adaptation of The Notebook with Ingrid Michaelson, and that you were Chita Rivera's vocal director for different concerts. And I'm like, and then I talk with you, and just the humility that spills out of you is just
uh,
so.
get around,
Well,
you know.
thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jimmy.
How did you know you wanted to write music?
Well, I'd been playing piano from a very early age. I think I was 3 when my parents started me in piano lessons. So music was always a part of my life, and my parents were big advocates of the arts. And my little sister is now a professional violinist. So there was always music in our house growing up. And um, I just knew I was going to study music at a college level and then go on to see what I could do in music. And at some point, I just realized that there were other things to do with music besides playing the piano. And one of those things was writing music. And I wasn't one of those kids who would just write songs all the time and sit in my bedroom and have journals. I actually hated journaling. I still do, actually. um, but I really didn't start composing my own stuff until I was in college. And even then, I stuck a toe in, I guess. I didn't fully dive into it. And I started with poems, a couple of my own lyrics, but nothing that I really took seriously. So it hasn't really been until lately that I've really started calling myself a composer. It's been a gradual evolution of that part of my musical life.
Could you talk a little bit about, because what fascinates me is that with Renaissance, these were all poems.
Mm.
These were all poems of Edna. Is it Edna St. Vincent, right? Millay.
Edna St. Vincent Millay. Yeah.
And so what really compelled me, I was like, I have to word it this way, especially for the sake of the show. Your lyricist is deceased. So in a way, it's like you're kind of working alongside, very much like a spirit of somebody who's left their work behind, and it's really not that common. I mean, I know there's times where like a composer or a lyricist, one of them has passed on and they kind of finish with the other, but this was very much like, here's the poems,
Yep.
and you have free reign. So could you talk about what that experience was like, and how what it's like working with pre-established lyrics, and how you find the emotion and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that the truth is there?
Yeah, it's definitely a multi-level thing. When I first started setting her poetry, I didn't know I was writing a musical about her life. The whole Millay chapter of my life began when I auditioned for NYU for the music theater writing program, where one of the tasks is to set your favorite song, Time Does Not Bring Relief, to music. Um, and that was back in 2001 that I did that. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of Millay, being this great American poet, but I hadn't heard of her coming from Australia. Um, and so over the years, I subsequently, when I felt like writing a song and I was not writing my own lyrics at that point, I would just open open my volume of Malay poetry and find a poem that spoke to me, and it would just be a random moment of whatever emotion I wanted to pour out in music at that time. So I would look for something that had a similar song structure to a lyric, or similar structure to a song lyric, and also something that I emotionally connected with at that moment. So, but I eventually had over a dozen of these songs. I thought, okay, I have a Malay song cycle here, and I played them for Dick Scanlon, and he said, I, I think there's a story here. I think we can figure out what this there may be a story we can tell about Malay. And so that changed my relationship with her. She was no longer just someone whose words I was setting, but she was someone I was bringing to life. And one of the many things that one of the many tasks that I took on as the composer of that show, was wanting to honor her as a woman, as an artist, as a poet, and as someone who is no longer, um, in the top 5 list of poets that are studied at most schools and colleges. So I thought I have a responsibility. I mean, she's helping me put my work into the world in a sense. I need to help bring her work back and introduce her to a new audience.
She was a
So
really forward thinker for the time too. I mean, from what I
very
read,
forward.
she was pretty sex positive. I mean, she was pretty progressive
Yeah,
for
she
that time.
was. Yeah. She was pretty unapologetic about the way she lived, and very brave and brazen, and that all comes through in her work. I think she was a great example for strong, artistic women 100 years ago.
When you were taking those poems and setting them to music, were there ever moments where you were like, I don't know if what I have written out structure wise fits? Like, was there a big revision process for you? Did you ever feel like, in a way, she was there going, no, 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 I don't like that, fix this? Or is that your own, is that your own little critic inside of you? How would you describe it?
I mean, look, I think it was a blessing and a curse that my collaborator was not in the room with me, right?
That you know
I
of.
didn't get it. Yeah. Yeah, right. I have to remember who I'm talking to. Um, I wish I'd known you 2 years ago. We could have had some great
She
zeitgeist.
doesn't like that. Switch measure 4 to 8.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that would have been so great, to have a visit from her. Um, Look, the poems are the poems. So I never changed a word because I obviously wanted to honor her work.
Yeah.
The tweaks that I had to make, if you can even call them that, where I added vocalises, I added a whole refrain of whoa, whoa, I would add musical oohs and ahs and la la las and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, just to allow the poem to breathe and have some space musically because the language was so dense. Um, so I never really like messed with her words in that way. Um, I think as we were telling her story through the book scenes and then integrating these songs, um, yeah, there was definitely a sense that we were honoring this woman, but we also wanted to be truthful, about her life and about the choices that she made. And she basically was always putting her art and her work first. but she felt that she needed to, and look what she was able to leave behind. But we really just tried to capture that, the complexity of her life and of an artist's life. So I would hope that she thought that we honored her
I know she did.
in
I know,
a good
absolutely.
way.
And that's when I, that's when I don't even have to be a medium to go. I'm sure she's
Mm.
deeply touched by it. Um, I'm gonna play people at home a quick clip from my favorite piece from it. Not to put you on the spot, but one of my favorite moments from Time Does Not Bring Relief. So all right, and then I wanna just dissect it for a minute. I'm gonna like, all right, what was going through your brain? How do you know to go here and here? So here we go. Quick clip.
Some quiet place where never fell his foot or shone his face. I say there is no memory of him here. And so stand stricken, so remembering him.
Your music has a way of, I don't know, it lingers with me. It's so
Mm.
special. And now and then have you, I mean, I don't know if it exists, have you fallen down the rabbit hole? Are there tons of like other YouTube versions of people covering this that?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many. Composers love Malay because the poetry is so often lyrical.
Yeah.
Um, and there is this song that is the NYU Graduate Music Theater writing assignment. So for the last 20 plus years, probably 20 to 50 people are setting their own version of this poem. So just that song alone, there must be hundreds of versions out there. But there are many, many versions of other Malay poems that have been set to music.
Well, I'm gonna fall down that rabbit hole.
Mm,
Um, so in terms of, I guess let's go there if that's okay. So you put your baby out there, which has got to be a very vulnerable thing to do,
oh,
to be like, hey, here's what I have been working on so much, and now what are your thoughts when
yeah,
you don't have a degree in music or composition, and what do you think about what we put out there? And
yeah.
so what are your thoughts on, because I won't lie, I sweat. Like my palms sweat anytime I read a New York Times review of something. It makes me so nervous. And I usually start swearing and like just, and my husband's like, we read it and we're like, it's bullshit. Like
Hmm.
just some of the reviews will kill something dead.
Hmm.
And I find that the ones that are usually reviewed the harshest flourish. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I guess what are your thoughts on reviews,
Oh
what
my
that
God,
process is like?
I could talk for days. Look, I think in this country, in the city, way too much weight is given to reviews and reviewers. It's one person's opinion. I think art is so completely subjective. And the fact that things in our industry will survive or die based on one person's opinion is so heartbreaking. And I think it's something that needs to be fixed. We need to take the power away from the reviewers. And I understand why they're there. It's a marketing tool and it's a way of bringing people in to see shows. But I think there needs to be a healthier way to quote unquote review shows or speak about the work, and have different voices reviewing different shows, which is starting to happen now. But it'll be interesting when the theater comes back, looking at how the brand new shows will be reviewed, opening up after this unprecedented traumatic time, right? A review is going to be
Kinder.
easier on shows, kinder. It'll be fascinating to see. But yeah, look, I feel like I've been mentioned in the New York Times, um, more times less favorably than favorably. But as an arranger or as an accompanist, and I've only been mentioned probably half a dozen times, but it is having said all the things I just said about it's not important, it shouldn't be important. It's still like a knife to the heart when you read something that's not 1000% glowing about you. And so much of that is ego, I understand. But the other part of it is that you are putting your baby into the world, and it may not resonate with that one person, but it's going to resonate with 100 other people who just don't happen to have jobs writing for the New
Yeah.
York Times theater
I mean,
department.
you said it best. I mean, it's funny. I mean, because while I don't necessarily get reviewed, in a way, each time I do a reading, it's funny. I always say each time I do a reading, it is like an opening night, so to speak, in the fact that you're working with somebody who doesn't necessarily know the way you work. And even though I try to say, oh, I don't care if they, I don't want to say I don't care. You have to not care
Hmm.
in order to, you know what I mean? And
That's it. That's exactly right. Hmm.
you got to put your own ego aside, but it is tough. I mean, the one once in a blue moon, I will have somebody at the end of a reading who will run down like the quality of the reading and will basically like treat it like a quiz. She's like, well, you get like a 9 out of a 10 and you got this, but you said, you know, um, Jerry with a J instead of like Jerry with a G or something. I'm like, really? And you know what I mean? So I know I as well just have to step back, and it's always nice to get an email back, after I send a note from a reading that's like, thank you so much, this made sense. But I know there's those times where like if you don't hear back, you're like,
Right.
did they get something good out of it, and then there comes a point where Jen Colella and I mentioned this, there comes a point where we have to step back and go, okay, it's not my responsibility to tell you how to unpack these messages
Hmm.
or my music.
Hmm.
And maybe it doesn't gel with you, but maybe you leave the reading and you tell your mom, and your mom's like, oh, that makes so much sense, so maybe somebody else connects with it. And
That's right. That's
so
right. And I think at the end of the day, if you are doing your best and most authentic work, then that should be the be all and end all. Shouldn't matter how someone else responds or reacts to it. And you know, I I remember so vividly standing at the very back of the theater on closing night of Renaissance, and I listened to the final bars, and I thought, well, the show did not get a great New York Times review. The show's not moving to Broadway. It's not like everyone I know from Midtown flocked down to see this show. Like there are a list of things that I wished would have gone a little bit differently. I thought, but if I get hit by a bus on the way home, I'm still going to be happy. I'm still going to be pleased that this is what I put out into the world. And now I've done it. I gave birth to this thing, and it now exists
yeah,
beyond me. So at the end of the day, that's really all you should be aiming for.
I spoke with somebody actually who saw it, because I guess they went to support Hannah in it, and they said it was just gorgeous. And so, and they did they the review I read, they reviewed you very favorably. They spoke very highly of you, and I was like, and I was
Thanks.
ready to
Yeah,
ready to.
there were some very nice things that were said, but you always, it's like you always want more, right? You always want, that's such a great life lesson. Like, what are you waiting for other people to say, and what are you waiting for them to give you? Like, there's no way that that little tiny show would have transferred to Broadway, but there was somewhere deep down inside of me that I wanted the heading in the New York Times to say Broadway's next hit. Like, it just
Yeah.
never happened. So you have to find the satisfaction and the gratitude and the humility elsewhere.
And sometimes that comes after. I mean, and look at
Hmm.
Edna St. Vincent. I mean, I don't know if she ever would have anticipated that somebody would have been turning her poems into a musical. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? So I always say that sometimes the greatest impact, it might be long after we're done with it, or
That's right.
and so
Yeah. Could be
I
100 years down the road, someone's turning the musical back into it.
Exactly.
Well, of
I
course,
know.
there are
I
movies.
gotta get somebody to write like a musical about mediums and
Well, you know people.
I well, I'd love to talk with you because it's funny. It came up in the reading, and I'd love to talk with you about the role of like a mentor within music direction and being a composer, because obviously I have a mentor as a medium. I have somebody that I love and I trust, and when I need it, I give them a buzz and I'm like, I got this symbol for the first time today. Like, did I relay that right? And
Mm.
as mediums, it's really neat. We can kind of tap into somebody else's reading and go, yep. And was their name this, or did they talk about this? But I mean, what's neat is that, for us, I mean, our mentors, we're still working under the same style. So how does that work for you? I mean, with mentors being so different, what is the ultimate goal of a
Yeah,
mentor for a
I think
composer?
as a musician or composer or any kind of artist, you're not. I I mean, the role of a mentor for me has been most helpful when it's about uh, the mentality. It's not so much about the work, although it is about the work too, obviously. But it's calling someone saying, I have been sitting at the piano for 3 hours and I can't get this chord progression. They won't say, oh, we'll try a B minor chord. They'll say, go outside, go for a run, listen to some music, go for a swim. Like, it's like general but specific tips and tools on how to clear your writer's block, um, or just encouragement in that um, all writers go through challenges. Writing is never easy, and that's the thing that I have 3 or 4 or 5 fantastic mentors over the years. I don't think anyone's ever been prescriptive in a musical sense.
Yeah.
I think I've mostly used my mentors as beacons of support and encouragement, and that's what I think I would like to be for people that I mentor. I think it's just about sharing my experiences and encouraging them to keep going when it's hard, rather than saying, "Oh, you know, add more vibrato and change that F sharp to a G sharp or whatever."
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head too. So many times, I mean, and now I'm thinking of it as you're talking. I mean, my mentorship, it's the same thing. It's usually never you relayed this message wrong. It's usually I'm beating myself up over, or, I'm like, I got 9 out of 10 things correct on this reading, and here I am beating myself up. And
Mm-hmm,
because the
mm-hmm.
truth is, I mean, you talked about sitting at a piano for 3 hours and having a temporary block. Like, as mediums, we get blocked too. It can happen. So, and it's always from the same thing. I'm assuming composers go through. It's the self-doubt. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
it's
the
the
negative self talk.
it's the imposter syndrome, where
Mm-hmm.
we think that there must be countless others that are better than us, that are doing this so easily. And I've had it happen a couple times, and it's not fun. And you do have to just put on your your big boy pants and get over yourself and go out for a walk and walk the dogs, or
Yep.
or it could literally be something like getting a massage, like taking, just doing something for yourself that
Yeah.
it
It's not
recenters me.
it's not the work, but it's the work.
Yeah. It's the work. Yeah. The work behind the work that
Yeah.
is crucial. Self-care. And I'd also love to talk with you about your song cycle of Well-Behaved Women. And Carmel wrote this incredible series of songs that are just all about badass women throughout history. There's like Eve and Cleopatra and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Harriet Tubman. And when you wrote these songs, did you write them also with, for example, like LaShawn's in mind, or Liz Calloway? And when you do that, is it difficult because, like, are you not only channeling what Harriet Tubman would say and how she would sing it, but how the artist that you're crafting it for would sing it?
Some I did, some I did not. I'd say most I did not actually. I had the idea to write just a bunch of standalone songs that would then be contained within this framework of amazing historical women that we know or that we do not know, but they all have something really cool to say. So for the most part, I would focus on the historical woman and try to get into their head at a very specific time in their lives. And that's where I would start the song from. But for Harriet Tubman, I did actually think of LaChanze.
Did you?
Like, this is because she's a dear friend of mine and such an incredible artist. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to write this song and hope that hope that one day she can sing it, and she did, which was very, very exciting.
Which LaChanze was also, I mean, it's a great segue. LaChanze was also in If Then, which you were the music director for. So I loved If Then. I remember, I know I told you about it. It was such a special show to have something that was not based on a book or like a movie. And I felt
Completely
like
original.
completely original. It, I felt like one of the review things that I read said that it got too complicated. And I'm like, why are we dumbing this down? You know what I mean? Like no one in the theater that I was with was confused. It was so easy to follow. I felt like the plot line and the way the characters, the same sex relationship characters were portrayed were just, I felt like so meaningful and
Hmm.
honest. And what was that experience like, doing If
It was
Then?
such a beautiful show to be a part of from the get-go and right through the closing performance and then continuing on to tour. I always say that every single show you do is different, right? But there was something about coming to work every night, if then just feeling like such a special family. And that's because Idina led this great.
Sure.
She really was a great leader of the company, but then LaShawn's and Anthony and Jen and everyone just stepped up, and it was a company full of adults and mature people and artists who just were all so excited to be telling this original story too. There was such a heart to not just to the show, but to the company and to um it's cliche, but that it was a family. Like it really was a family in a way that I haven't experienced in other shows. And it felt the same way down in the pit every night. We all really just took care of each other, and the music was so beautiful and just so heart opening. Um, it really was a joy to be a part of. And every show that I've worked on, I definitely
Sure.
don't want to say that those other shows were
Oh,
not
of course.
joyous, because they have all been joyous. But there was something special about that, and I think it had to do with this unique original story that we were telling about real people.
So to find some parallels between it, because I know sometimes if I am, if I'm reading somebody, for example, whose work I really admire, or even if it's not a Broadway performer, if it's, your everyday person and there's a message that comes up and I'm like it shows on my face, like they'll show me and I'm like, and then I'll go, oh, how do you want me to word that? Because it might be really tender. And I'm like,
Hmm.
so sometimes when I ask questions, if you have had a reading with me or you see me asking like 2 to 3 extra questions, it's just my way of softening the turf. So
Mm.
so I wanted to ask you, with having Adina at the helm of the ship, what is it like? I mean, for example, as music director, you have to deliver notes to her. So, I mean, is that an awkward process to be like, hey, are you okay? Like you were sounding, not that she would, but I mean, are there ever times where you're like, you sounded a little off on this or you're
Mm.
rushing this? How does that work? I mean, is it nerve wracking or you're like, it's the part of the job?
Yeah, look, I think it's funny. You reminded me of my very first professional job, which was associate music directing Elegies by William Finn. And
Ah,
my main role in the rehearsals for that show was to work with Betty Buckley and teach her all of her notes. And this was a brand new show. So it's not like she'd listen to the recording and then come in. So, and I was, I don't know, 24, 25, maybe, baby, zero experience professionally.
and she's
And I
like
thought
Betty
that,
Buckley.
and she's Betty Buckley. So I'm like, how am I supposed to teach her stuff and, like lead her through this process? And I asked Rob Fisher, who was a mentor of mine and
Yeah.
a dear man, and he said, you need to know what the composer's intent is and intentions are, and you are the conduit between the composer, and the singer. That's all you're there to do. I mean, you can't pretend that you have 40 years of experience. You just have to let her feel safe and know what the composer wants and help her achieve that. And so I've taken that through me as I've music directed many other fancy people over the years. Look, and there's definitely an element of trust that needs to be there, and I mean, you can't force someone to trust you. I think like one of my gifts and something I'm proud of is that I am pretty good at helping people feel at ease and feel comfortable. I think some of that is just my Australian laid backness and my sense of humor. And I think, you know, I am there to help them do their job better. I'm not there to force them to do something that they don't want to do or to push them in a direction they don't want to go in. So that's my philosophy as an MD. So pretty early on, I, you know, developed that rapport with Idina. And then, you know, it's a couple of years developing the show. And then we're finally on Broadway and we're doing 8 shows a week. And yeah, she would get tired because it was a crazy, crazy sing 8 times a week. And she's also opening Frozen and she's singing at the Super Bowl. And, you know, there was a lot going on that year that we did If Then. And so I would just have to go, you know, check in with her every night before the show, see how she was doing. And then if there are any issues, I would see her afterwards or she would ask me to come to her dressing room and you just talk about it like, you know, like you're 2 adults. And I would say, you know, how are you feeling? Um, you know, maybe there were also things that I would need to ask her to look at. If I wasn't getting a pickup clearly enough, I'd have to say, oh, can you turn towards me and give me a little more of a physical entrance so I know where to conduct the downbeat, that kind of thing. You just have to have those conversations clearly and with respect. And that's how you get through it. I mean, it's never about attacking or blaming or, you know, being defensive. It's certainly easier as I get older, though. I will say that. Like 25-year-old me with Betty Buckley, you know, that was a really good starting place. But then, you know, it's like 30-something-year-old me with Idina Menzel was a little less scared.
Yeah, like I got this. Which
Yeah.
God, I gotta pick your brain. I'm gonna put a clip up while we're talking about it. I think one of my favorite things, and it must be such a humbling experience, is I feel like one of this misconceptions about Broadway. You know, if you're not a New Yorker, or if you're, you know, if you haven't been to a Broadway show, but you've maybe just seen tours, so many people forget how tiny these theaters are. And now I don't know the full story behind Radio City because even I'm baffled because I'm like, that's a big theater. The video it's crazy. It's thrilling to watch. It's also funny because at one point I literally thought somebody was like pooping next to you while you were
Well,
like,
someone was changing the trash.
yeah, I was like, oh my
Literally,
God. I was like,
the
is
janitor was
somebody,
changing the trash. Yeah.
I heard, I'm like, is somebody using the bathroom?
Yeah.
So I will put up a clip while we're talking about this, but there you are conducting Idina's, you know, the orchestra. And or was it orchestra and Idina?
So yeah, he is the dirty little secret about the Tonys. A lot of the performances are pre-recorded with the orchestra or the band. So the instrumentation was not live. Idina was singing live. Um, I was conducting Idina so she could see, so she could have
Yeah.
some kind of like live person. There was a giant monitor, a TV screen at the back of Radio City, so she could see me waving my arms. But I was not conducting a live orchestra, but there were cutoffs and things that I needed to give her so that she would be lined up with the orchestra.
Yeah.
It's much cleaner. You have much more control for TV. I mean, the Tony Awards are a pretty popular TV broadcast, so they try to pre-record as much as they can and still have the live vocals. So there still is an element of authenticity, and there is a live orchestra in the pit at Radio City that's playing all of the incidental music. So when a winner of a certain award is announced, they will play 16 bars from that show. But all of the big performance numbers pre-recorded so that the sound can be controlled as it's
So how did you
broadcast.
get stuck in a bathroom though? How were they like, go to this toilet stall?
Well, because who knows? I mean, there are thousands of people running around Radio City on the night of the Tonys, right? Thousands of people, in and out of the seats in the theaters and backstage. And it's a lot of people to herd. So I imagine they're like, okay, we'll just have this tiny little bathroom on the fourth floor that we can send the conductors to. That's going to be easy. They don't have to deal with like getting lost in the bowels of
Yeah.
the basement. And so, almost every music director you talk to in New York has had their moment in the bathroom at the Tony Awards. It's like right.
The look on your face is so cute at the end where you're just like, we did it,
Yeah. And it's still really nerve-wracking, right? I mean,
I'm sure.
you're not gonna mess up because you can't, there's no live musicians. You're not gonna give the wrong cue, but you're still there and you're still a part of the performance. And Idina Menzel is belting her face off and she's waiting for the cutoff so that she doesn't hold on past the band. So, it's still scary. And, there are not only thousands of people watching live in the
millions,
theater, but there's millions watching on television.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that I ran into a friend of mine backstage as I was on my way up to the bathroom. I said, can you come with me? I'm about to conduct. It's only going to be 3.5 minutes.
That's
it would be so funny if you filmed it. It's an old friend of mine from Western Australia. And I think it was his first Tony Awards. And, it was such a kick.
It's awesome. Yeah. I'll put up the full clip in the bio so people can watch it. It's one of my favorites. It's so funny because, if you obviously can't really hear Idina, but I mean, you can sometimes if your friend filming it picked her up from the acoustics of the lobby, but it's wild. So
it is so funny. Yeah. I remember like, as I was waving my arms, I'm like, I think the janitor came in to change the trash out. Oh, well. Wow, this is not what I imagined when I was growing up in Perth, Western Australia. The glamour of the Tony Awards. But it's been a great story for years. So.
Oh, it's wonderful. A couple more things and we'll wrap up. I mean, obviously with this being a video, a video podcast and show about arts and mediumship. Is there anything that you don't mind sharing about your reading? Because I read you, what was it, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Anything that you feel comfortable?
Gosh, it was incredible. It's funny. I talked to Sally the next day, who's the amazing Sally Wilford.
Sally Wilford.
Us, and she said, "What?" She said, "What did you learn?" And I said, "I'm still processing it all. It was all so, there were so many things that just kept unraveling and have kept unraveling. I've been thinking a lot about. I asked you at the very end a question to ask my ancestors, like, where am I supposed to be? Because right now this is, we've all been a little transient because of what's happening in the world. And I'm now heading to Australia. And I really thought that the answer was going to be stay in Australia, stay with your family, because, I'm talking to my family members through you. And you said that it was my grandmother's who said, stay in New York. I was like, oh, or come back to New York. Your home is New York. And that's really been playing out in my mind because 2 weeks, 2 months, like 6 months ago, I was like, I don't know if New York is my home anymore. So that was a great piece of info. Gosh, so many great things.
Oh, can we, if it's okay, and if it's not, I'll cut this part out. Can we talk about the part so as a medium, if you're watching, we call it objective or subjective seeing clairvoyance. And mine is subjective, meaning I don't actually see the spirits like I see you here in the physical. I kind of see them up here, and we're shown symbols many times. And I saw a symbol that I thought was meant to represent your career. And I saw the plane, and then I saw the plane circle and the plane land. And I'm like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to run with this. And I felt really good about it. And then you were like, no, that's not so much a symbol as like, this is literally what just happened. So do you want to talk about that for a second, if that's okay?
So I've been trying to get back to Australia for months now. And the government has had caps to the people who are for the number of people coming in, and the airlines have been a real mess because the government keeps changing the rules with people who are allowed in and whatnot. So it was my second attempt, and I actually got on the plane. The first attempt, I couldn't even get on the plane. They canceled my ticket at the airport. Second attempt, I got on a plane. I was flying from New York to Phoenix to LA to Sydney, and everything was okay. I boarded in New York. I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna get home. Landed in Phoenix, and there was a notification on my phone saying the rest of your ticket has been canceled. So literally, I had to get back on a plane to go back to New York. That was three months ago now. So yeah, that was a literal thing.
A little, not a
before.
symbol. And
Yeah,
so
that was
I am
great.
hoping that by the time this episode airs, you are safely in
Oh,
Australia.
yeah.
And
I'll
it's
let
funny
you know.
because when I had asked you about, well, two things. So the one thing that, I always stress to folks is that your loved ones on the other side are never going to say, you have to stay in New York, you must go to Australia. But what's so beautiful is that when they give it's always their opinion. It's going to make sense based off of usually, like, for example, I try my hardest to get a feel for the personality of the soul that I'm channeling. That way, when they give the advice, it's not just a medium going, stay in New York because I think you should stay. That has nothing to do with it. So I try my hardest to get a feel for their personality. That way you would go, okay, like so-and-so was a practical woman or it does make sense that even though they know how much I miss my family, this might be more important here. And
Yeah. No, that really did stick with me.
good. I'm
Yeah.
glad. And that's go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. Well, I was going to say one of the other things that we talked about was my collaborator on this new piece coming up, and that just you hit the nail on the head with that, because it's a woman that I just love writing with, and we're about to start a writing retreat tomorrow, actually.
Oh, you're going with her.
So, yeah, we're both going to Provincetown to do some writing, and so it was great to just have that reaffirmation that this is a good collaboration, and that it's going to be a different journey than the last show that I did.
I'm rooting for you. I know nothing but I know me. Even as if you can imagine with your career being so phenomenal, but I know just nothing but the biggest and best things are coming your way in addition. So if you were stuck as a ghost in a theater, which doesn't happen, but again, if you were stuck for all of eternity and you could only listen or watch one musical over and over every night, what would it be?
That's a great question.
That's what Jen said. She was like, this is a phenomenal question.
Oh God, just one?
Just one.
Oh, there's so many. Well, there's not so many.
You can give two if you need to.
Well, my first was going to be West Side Story, but then I wanted to change it to Gypsy.
Okay, so far Gypsy is leading the pack. We've got about 6. I don't know which order this will, but West Side Story has not come up yet.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Well, fun story for you. You'll appreciate this. My vocal director growing up, I did theater at this incredible summer camp for young artists, and it really helped me to get the bug. And our vocal director, his name was Donnie, and he was in the original. Just crazy. He ran the first national tour of West Side Story.
Wow.
And he told me that when he got the interview for the audition, he had no clue who was going to be there. And he was given an address, and the address was Leonard's home. And he got there and they threw the score at him, and they were just like, play from start to finish. And that was the audition. And he was like, I found out right on. Crazy, right? He got the job right on the spot. And then they were like, we'd like you to join us tonight. And so Don got to sit in the pit of the original Broadway production of West Side Story and just listen to this brand new show. Like, it gives me goosebumps to tell it.
That's a classic Broadway story.
He was incredible.
It's a dream.
So,
how fantastic.
Random musical theater character that you think it could be any that you think would benefit most from a medium.
Oh. It's funny. I went to Adina's character, I think, because she was freshest on
For Beth or
my
Elizabeth?
mind for Elizabeth.
She would.
'Cause yeah, yeah. But then I went to Olive Ostrovsky from Spelling Bee because that poor little soul,
She needs it.
she just needs some love and some guidance.
Yes. She's got
That's
so
so
many
funny.
family issues. Yeah, I feel like Elizabeth or Beth. Well, it depends on if she's Beth or Elizabeth. Which one might
Right,
need
right,
the
right,
medium
right.
more. But definitely Olive would need. Olive just needs a hug.
Yeah.
She does.
Oh, but can you imagine though, if at the end of the show, after what's his name dies,
James
they do a
Snyder.
medium. James,
We don't. Jen and I don't even call him Josh. We just say James
Josh.
Snyder.
I know. I was like, why can't I remember his name? James. Yeah.
That would be a
James's
good
character,
one.
Josh. James, who plays Josh, is what Michael Greif used to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
final question, what do you think, with your own psychic predictions, what do you think the future of Broadway looks like when we're back from this pandemic?
Oh, it's weird. I haven't let myself visualize it yet. I think because I'm nervous that
Sure.
it's not going to be like better. Look, I think the optimistic me will see all the theaters full again, as in like a show in every theater, plus the theaters being full of New Yorkers, full of tourists, full of people who want to support the arts. I think we're going to have a lot more diverse theater. I think that's one of the great things that's going to come out of this time, and the the interest in telling way more diverse stories and having diverse creative teams. I think that we are going to see, maybe 5 years, because things take a while to be developed, even in a good, healthy year. But I think 5 years from now, I would love to see just a bunch of different styles of show, different people writing,
Yeah.
people of all shapes and sizes and colors on those stages.
A Carmel Dean musical on Broadway.
That's what I'd like to see.
That's what, and I'm telling you, I'm all about, we make it manifest. I always
Yep.
say, you put out there to the universe what you expect. And if
Yep.
we think that we don't deserve something, it doesn't happen. And so, no,
I
I'm putting it out there
love
for you.
a
It's
Carmel Dean
coming
musical on Broadway.
with Edna St. Vincent in the front row in spirit. cheering along.
Yes.
So, well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest. This is it's just such a gift to have you here and to soak up a little bit of your perspective and the way, because so many of the guests I've had are more on stage, and it's such a treat to have somebody that is, writing music and interpreting music, even if it's not, it was just a thrill. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Folks at home, I will put some links up to some of my favorite pieces of her work, to her website, so you can get to learn more about her if you don't know who she is yet. If you don't, shame on you, but no, I'm kidding. But you better learn more about her after this. So again, thank you for being our guest, and get to Australia safely, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Bye-bye.